An unwelcome guest pays an unwanted visit to the Florida Keys today, bringing strong winds, high tides, and heavy winds. Hurricane George leaves the islands a mess. Good evening. Welcome to Weather Center. I'm Paul Emick.
And I'm Dan Atkinson. President Clinton has declared a state of emergency in Florida, clearing the way for federal assistance following the destruction left by Hurricane George. The emergency covers 17 counties in the Sunshine State. But the storm's not finished yet. It's gathering strength, and we're keeping a close watch on it. Jeff Morrow is in the Forecast Center with the latest on Hurricane George.
Dan, that's right. You hit the nail on the head there. It is not done yet. It is moving into the Gulf of Mexico. From there, we think it's going to be drifting more toward the northwest and affecting some areas of the Gulf Coast. And there are hurricane watches out there, which we'll get to in just a moment. First, though, we want to give you the latest from the Hurricane Center. And George, as of the 8 p.m. advisory, and we'll be getting a new advisory from the Hurricane Center within the next 45 minutes to an hour. 24.7 north, 83.1 west, centering the hurricane 85 miles west of Key West. It is drifting slowly to the west-northwest, and the maximum sustained winds firmly there in Category 2 strength at 105 miles an hour. The pressure all the way down to 973 millibars. That's the lowest we have seen it in quite some time, since maybe before it hit the island of Hispaniola. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the watches and warnings, in fact all of them that are up, and the warnings still out here. Key Largo all the way up, including the outer lower Keys, all the way up to Sarasota, then from there north through the Tampa Bay area up to Bayport, tropical storm warnings, and then the new hurricane watches that came out today from about St. Mark's in Florida all the way over to Morgan City in Louisiana. Joining me now here in the Forecast Center is our hurricane expert John Hope, and John, you got some new information from the hurricane hunters.
Well, the pressure is now down to 973 millibars, so it is still beginning to, or still continues, I should say, to fall just a little bit. That's not a very rapid rate of fall, but if it keeps it up for several hours, then it could be up a notch on the winds as well.
All right, on our satellite perspective, John, Key West being about right in here, and we'll see that on the radar in a moment, still firmly in this red shading, still getting some pretty strong squally weather from the south.
And we've been talking to folks there from the Keys, and they want us to know that still in the lower Keys they're getting very heavy rain, very strong winds. The automated data stations we have around the Keys still getting gusts to hurricane force, so it's not over with yet, not in the lower Keys.
All right, when you take a look at our satellite perspective, you can still pick out pretty much where we think the eye or the center of circulation is there.
And as this moves northwest, you know, we're still going to have a little bit of high tide, so we want to emphasize that, because on the south side of this, the winds are going to come around from the southwest, and they're going to be coming up into this portion of Florida here. And this will definitely put the tides up above normal along that portion of the coast.
All right, so some folks along the west coast of Florida, even though you're not going to get a direct hit from the hurricane, we'll have to watch out for that. Here's the radar, John, and again, we're pretty much losing. In fact, we lost the last imagery there of where the eye was, but you can definitely see all the very squally weather, which is still affecting the Keys.
And it's receding, but very slowly, Jeff. It'll take it the rest of the night to get out of the lower Keys.
Yeah, Key West may actually be in the squally weather right on through much of the overnight hours.
I think so, yes.
Okay. A little bit farther up the peninsula here, still a couple of bands of some locally heavy thunderstorms, John. And I guess the primary threat there is some isolated tornadoes.
Well, we've been watching those with quite a bit of concern because, as you know, a number of tornadoes have been reported in Florida today. And those bands, those outer bands, are still very much intact and look pretty potent. So we don't think that the threat of tornadoes is quite over with yet.
And in fact, there is a tornado watch out there until 11 p.m. local time. John, on the longer range forecast here, again, a little uncertainty, but generally a northwest track?
We think so, maybe mostly west-northwest tonight, but by tomorrow we think it will be turning basically toward the northwest and impact eventually here over the weekend, or some part of the weekend up on the Gulf Coast. Now, whether it's in Louisiana or Mississippi or Alabama or Florida, we can't say yet. It's a bit too early, but that's where the watch is. Now, some of that area, no doubt, either late tonight, maybe more likely tomorrow, will be under hurricane warning, and at that time that area will be narrowed down a little bit, I think.
All right, and how about the intensity? Do we think it might be, on our special frame here, we have it up to Category 3. Do you think that's possible?
Oh, yes. We're very afraid that that'll be the case. You know, you got 105 miles an hour out there now, and it wouldn't have to increase all that much to be a Category 3. We think the chances of it being a Category 3, that is sustained winds more than 110 miles an hour, are really pretty good.
It would only have to go up 6 more miles an hour
right.
for that to be a major hurricane.
Right.
All right. Thanks, John Hope. We'll be back in about a half an hour to give you the very latest on George. But let's go right now to an area that is currently under that hurricane watch up along the Florida Panhandle, and that is at Pensacola Beach, where Kristen Dodd is standing by. Kristen, give us the latest.
Well, the latest from here, Jeff, is that we are now under an evacuation order. All the barrier islands, the residents are supposed to evacuate tonight as well as tomorrow, and that goes all the way from Perdido Key over toward Destin, which is just off to our east. Also included in that are the low-lying areas around Pensacola Bay, as well as residents who live in mobile homes. One reason for the evacuation order is not so much with the anticipation of strong winds, but the potential for flooding due to storm surge. More people are killed with the water during a hurricane than the winds, and that is what they're going to be bracing for here along some of these very fragile barrier islands. In 1995, when Opal came through this area here at the dunes, this pool was actually uplifted because of the storm surge and shot out into the parking lot. This entire first floor also was wiped out. So this year, they're not taking any chances. They've shut down the hotel, they've boarded everything up, and all the tourists that were staying here and the guests have been ordered to leave. We were one of those guests. We also will be changing our position by tomorrow, and will continue to fall back away from the coast as the conditions may worsen over the next 48 hours. Now, other residents of the barrier islands were also getting ready today. In Pensacola Beach, folks were heading to the hardware store to pick up plenty of boards to try and prepare their homes. Now is the time to be doing that, and residents here are wasting no time in getting ready.
I'm very concerned. We're leaving as soon as we get everything taped up and the boards on the windows. We're out of here. We've been through, I guess, a couple hurricanes, and we're not staying. We're smart enough not to stay. We're leaving.
Also throughout the day today, not only residents getting ready, but the emergency managing personnel for Escambia County, which includes the barrier islands. They've been meeting throughout the day and watching conditions very closely, and they were the ones who issued the evacuation orders earlier this afternoon. They tell residents they have plenty of time to evacuate in an orderly manner. There's no reason to panic, but they want to give plenty of notice to avoid congested roadways throughout the islands. Back to you, Jeff.
All right, a lot of lessons there learned from Opal, I imagine.
That's
all right.
right.
Thank you very much, Kristen Dodd, reporting live there from Pensacola Beach. All right, now Hurricane George has devastated much of the Caribbean already.
The Gulf Coast is on alert as Hurricane George continues its west-northwest track, leaving behind destruction and lots of rain. All eyes are on Hurricane George as the storm slowly churns through the Gulf. Good evening. Welcome to Weather Center. I'm Sharon Resulton. We're, of course, tracking Hurricane George from our forecast center. Here's Jeff Morrow with more.
And Sharon, we have the latest from the National Hurricane Center just in, and pretty much status quo with the hurricane as it continues to drift west-northwesterly away from the Florida Keys and out into the Gulf of Mexico. Where it moves from there, well, we'll talk about that in just a moment. Let's first of all show you the satellite imagery, and you can see George centered here off the west coast of Florida. Tampa is up here. This is Key West about right here, and Key West, as well as many of the lower keys, still getting some pretty strong gusty winds and a lot of heavy rain as some bands of the moisture continue to funnel around the east side of the hurricane. Here is the latest from the Hurricane Center: 24.9 north, 83.5 west, or about 490 miles southeast of Mobile, Alabama. Winds at 105 miles per hour, so it has pretty much remained steady state here over the last 3 hours. Movement west-northwest at 8, and the pressure, as from the latest Air Force reservists reconnaissance aircraft, 974 millibars. And we have some changes on our watches. We'll be updating this for you before too long. But these hurricane warnings are now tropical storm warnings. There are tropical storm warnings from Key Largo all the way up here to Bayport. So no more hurricane warnings out currently for the Florida Peninsula. So that is some good news. We also have hurricane watches from St. Mark's westbound all the way along the Gulf Coast to Morgan City, Louisiana. Admittedly a rather broad area, but again, there is a little bit of uncertainty as to the projected path of Hurricane George from this point on. Joining me now here in the Forecast Center is Meteorology Supervisor Stu Ostro. Stu, some of the new information seems to indicate we have pretty much a steady state hurricane at the present time.
We do. The intensity of the hurricane hasn't changed much during the course of the evening. It also had not moved much for a while, but averaging everything out, it's still wobbling along toward the west-northwest.
All right, and do we see much potential? There was a little bit of talk of maybe some wind shear finally get involved in this system.
There has been some wind shear over the northern Gulf of Mexico for the past couple of days. It'll be fighting a battle with the hurricane, and which one wins out may play a role in how intense it gets.
All right, here on the satellite imagery, again, this is the Florida Peninsula right here. Still some of these heavy squall bands, Stu, seem to be impacting particularly the lower keys.
The good news is that the hurricane warnings have been lowered, and we don't see any sustained winds at hurricane force over the Keys, but we still have some intense squalls that we'll see on radar in a minute coming in, particularly to the lower Keys.
All right, in fact, here is that radar imagery, and again, there is the center, the eye of the hurricane. This is Miami over here on the right-hand part of your screen, but you're right, Stu, some of this really heavy squall banding, I think Key West is about right in there, still affecting particularly the lower Keys.
Yeah, here's the center of circulation, just moving along slowly. The hurricane force winds are out here, but tropical storm warning still in effect. So that means there are winds of 39 to 73 miles per hour still possible.
Now farther up on the peninsula here, particularly in this area, still some isolated locally heavy thunderstorms, Stu, and I guess there still is the possibility of maybe an isolated tornado.
There is. Most folks fortunately won't experience a tornado tonight, but one or two of those cells out there could still spin one up.
All right, and I believe that this watch has actually been extended here beyond the 11 p.m. hour. We will get that updated for you. So we still have a tornado watch out for parts of the lower peninsula there. All right, time now to talk a little bit about our forecast track here, Stu, and this is really the $10 million question. Where does George go from here?
Well, I wish I knew the precise answer to that question. I do not know the precise answer, but we are confident that in general it'll keep moving on a track between west-northwest and northwest. Here we see, based on the previous advisory, the National Hurricane Center's forecast track somewhere in the middle. They've adjusted that slightly to the left, and we'll be adjusting this map a little bit too. There is some degree of uncertainty in this, so folks anywhere along the Gulf Coast and here need to track the latest on this hurricane. And the watches may be changed, at least in some places, to warnings, perhaps first tropical storm warnings before hurricane warnings sometime during the day Saturday.
Now what about the timing on that particular map? We had it maybe getting very close to the Gulf Coast by Sunday morning. Is that pushed back a little bit?
That has been pushed back a little bit. Right now the Hurricane Center's track has it coming in to the coast sometime maybe more on the order of Sunday evening or Sunday night.
All right. Thanks, Stu Ostro, Meteorology Supervisor. Stu and I will be back in a half an hour to give you the very latest on Hurricane George. But one area that is under a hurricane watch right now, and as Stu just mentioned, may go to at least a tropical storm warning during the day Saturday, is Pensacola Beach, and that is where Kristen Dodd has been standing by this evening. Kristen, again, there's an evacuation underway there right now. Is that right?
That's right. The evacuation order was given at about 5 o'clock this afternoon. Some folks have already been heading over to the more than 22 shelters that have been set up in the various high schools farther inland. Other residents, though, say they are not going to evacuate until it's almost a Category 3, but they are monitoring the situation very closely. Other cautious residents today headed to the hardware stores to prepare their homes. They have been purchasing plywood, batteries, flashlights, and also bottled water as well as chainsaws in order to have all the necessary supplies for the event that Hurricane George does make a move toward Pensacola. They want to be prepared well ahead of the storm.
I'm very concerned. We're leaving as soon as we get everything taped up and the boards on the windows. We're out of here. We've been through, I guess, a couple hurricanes and we're not staying. We're smart enough not to stay. We're leaving.
And here's a look at the Emergency Management Center that was set up today with representatives from Escambia County, various officials answering phones, taking questions, and they were the ones who have issued the evacuation order. Again, that happening at 5 o'clock this afternoon. One of the biggest concerns here at Pensacola Beach is not just the wind, but also the flooding potential due to storm surge. Remember, more people are killed in storm surge in hurricanes over high winds, and that is going to be a big problem here if Hurricane Hurricane George does begin to move closer to the islands. These are barrier islands. Granted, it's one of the longest in the country at 55 miles, but its average width is only 1,500 yards, and that easily could be flooded. That's what happened during Hurricane Opal. Residents here hope for that we don't see a repeat of that. Jeff?
All right, thanks very much, Kristen Dodd, reporting live from Pensacola Beach there in Florida. And remember that if you want any information and you're away from your television set, you can always go online to weather.com for the very latest on Hurricane George, or really any weather around the country or around the world. Let's check on the rest of the nation's weather right now, and for that we go back to the studio and Sharon Resulton.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. There is a lot to talk about here as we work our way northward into the northern plains, the upper Midwest, portions of the central plains, where showers are firing up, but also a few strong thunderstorms. And we have had some severe weather, so much so we've actually had reports of golf ball size hail.
You get another shot at something you missed, like this, or even this. Every Saturday on HBO, you're guaranteed a new movie. What you might not know is that you get another crack at it Tuesday night. If you miss Saturday Night Guarantee, you need Second Chance Tuesday.
To order, call Comcast today.
How can you plan your day when you don't know what the weather's going to be like? I know people like to plan ahead for their day. I can help you out.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
You're just in time for Storm Watch here on the Weather Channel. On an evening when weather conditions are pretty stable across most of the country, there is some isolated severe weather across the northern plains, though. At this moment, a tornado warning has just gone into effect in west central Minnesota, southeastern North Dakota for these counties, northern Wilkin County in Minnesota, northern Richland County in southeastern North Dakota. Doppler radar indicating a possible tornado at 10:37 local time. Possible tornado 5 miles southeast of Walcott or 24 miles northwest of Warpton. The storm moving toward the northeast at 30 miles per hour. We'll show you that on radar in just a moment. First off, though, let's find out the very latest on Hurricane George and the other three hurricanes moving across the Atlantic basin. You can see, of course, clearly the cloud swirl associated with Hurricane George, which is making its way slowly across the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Also in this satellite view, three hurricanes out in the Atlantic, Hurricane Karl, Hurricane Ivan, and Hurricane Jeanne. More about them in just a moment. First off, the latest information according to the 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time advisory from the National Hurricane Center. At that time, Hurricane George centered near latitude 24.9 north, longitude 83.5 west, or about 490 miles southeast of Mobile. Maximum sustained winds still 105 miles per hour, moving to the west-northwest at about 8 miles per hour with a central pressure of 974 millibars. Here is the color-enhanced infrared satellite view. As you probably remember, the yellows, reds, and oranges are indicating the colder, higher cloud tops normally associated with the heavier rainfall. And as you can see, there is still plenty of rain swirling in across the Florida Keys. Here's actual radar returns, and you can see the eye of Hurricane George here off in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, Key West here, Key Largo, and plenty of rain still circulating in the counterclockwise flow around Hurricane George. So lots of rain for you through these hours to come from Key West on up toward Naples and Fort Myers. and also still the possibility for some isolated tornadoes here on the outer fringes, on the right front quadrant, as it's called, of the hurricane. This is an area where there, for now, is going to be improving weather for you, places like Miami and Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach. But there could still be those isolated squall lines, which will result possibly in kicking up an isolated thunderstorm here or there, or isolated tornado, I should say. More on Hurricane George, complete details coming up at the top of the hour from the Forecast Center. Right now, though, let's give you the latest information on Hurricane Karl, Ivan, and Jeanne. Hurricane Karl, as of the 11 p.m. advisory, was centered about 1,460 miles to the west-southwest of the Azores Islands, maximum sustained winds 85 miles per hour, moving to the east-northeast at 14 miles per hour. This hurricane posing problems only for shipping interests in the central Atlantic and not expected to change much in strength or motion during the next 24 hours. Hurricane Ivan is, as of the 11 p.m. advisory, centered about 570 miles to the west of the Azores, maximum sustained winds around 90 miles per hour, moving to the east-northeast at around 21 miles per hour, and it's projected to change little in strength over the next 24 hours, but probably begin to turn more toward the east and accelerate. And then lastly, Hurricane 4, or the fourth of the hurricanes now in the Atlantic. This is Hurricane Jeanne, centered at 11 p.m., about 1,025 miles to the west-northwest of the Cape Verde Islands, maximum sustained winds 85 miles per hour, moving to the northwest at around 10 miles per hour, and Jeanne not expected to change much in strength or speed or direction during the next 24 hours. This is Jeanne, by the way, here the west coast of Africa, and we continue to watch tropical waves come off. This latest one has dissipated. That's the latest from the tropics. Hurricane George coming up the top.
As Hurricane George pulls away from the Florida Keys, watches are in effect for the central Gulf Coast. For continuous coverage you can rely on, watch weather.